Hello and welcome to Wizards, Warriors, and Words, a fantasy writing advice podcast. I'm Jed Herne, author of Fires of the Dead, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Rob Hayes.
Hello, I'm Rob Hayes, author of, let's go with Along the Razor's Edge.
Dirk Ashton.
Hi everybody, I'm Dirk, author of the Paternus Trilogy.
And Michael Fletcher.
Blackstone Heart, maybe? I think I wrote that one.
No, actually, Rob wrote that one.
I did.
Yeah.
I was wearing your skin at the time.
A Dirk skin
Take better care of it next time.
A lot of like out of context, that's going to sound really dark.
Yep. Particularly since the connection like cut out for a couple of those words, so it just sounded like wearing your skin. Take better care of it. That was basically it. Anyway, this is a listener Q&A episode, so we've got a couple of questions lined up from our wonderful listeners. If you have any questions that you want to send into the podcast, give us an email, wizardswarriorswords@gmail.com, or just message me on Twitter or something like that, or any of the other social media pipes, and the questions will potentially be answered on a future episode. So the first one comes from Axel Ekstrom, who asks, I've got this idea that I want to gather a group of unique characters with vastly different backgrounds who come together to overcome something, a kind of fellowship trope, I guess. My problem is just, I'm not sure how I'm actually going to bring them together in the story. So I guess my question is, what are some ways to do that? And how have you solved this kind of problem if it has come up for you? What are our thoughts on this?
I'd cheat and just start with them together.
Yeah, that's always a good solution.
See what
just launch straight into it. No, they're together, and that's all backstory bullshit. And you can kind of mention it throughout the book. Yeah. People love flashbacks.
I mean, there are a lot of really. I mean, that's kind of the way the Blade itself starts, right? Is well, you've got Logan Ninefingers on it being chased, but then it's the group of them that have been split up and they're together, and you kind of learn over a period why they're together, and then one of them gets Logan gets a message and has to go, or somebody comes to get him and he has to go see a wizard, there are all the tropes which get used again and again, but people like them, a regular person, farm boy, farm girl, whatever it is, or people show up and take them away to go do something, there are just so many ways to do that. The important thing though is to come to adventure, and that I think would be the main point. How do you come up with that? Think about ones you like, mix and match some ideas, try to do something a little bit new but familiar. Yeah, a little bit.
It's always a good one. Like find some books which use a similar sort of style with diverse characters coming together, and give them a read and see what you come up with in your head. A good one I did with Never Die was to add a bit of conflict, is to have the characters start off by fighting each other constantly, and then realize that they have to work together for the greater good, or because some creepy little child says you have to. Yeah,
Somebody invokes it, recruits them, finds them, or they're already together, or somebody comes and gets the main character, basically.
Well, like Kings of the Wild, where they used to be friends, and somebody's getting the band back together. There's a lot of ways to do it, and a lot of them might be sort of cliches, tropes, whatever, but as long as you do it right, that it doesn't matter.
Right.
Tropes are sort of there for a reason, and they actually make people feel comfortable, because they understand them without having to work at it. That's what I find anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. All right. I hope that helps, Axel. Our next question comes from Markham Alistair, who asks, how do you guys avoid the whole editing while writing and just focus on writing? I have a tendency to edit as I go instead of just writing and focus on editing at the end. first of all, is that the process you guys use? Do you just try to write it all first and then edit at the end, or are you sort of like editing along the way? And yeah, what do you kind of find beneficial for those approaches?
I try to write the whole story first, and then I'll go back and edit. I'll make a ton of notes as I'm going for things to go back and sort of fix or change or add or whatever. But yeah, I tend to try and get to the end before I then go back and give it a proper edit through. I'll do a little bit of editing here and there, usually of the chapter that I'm writing, if I think, oh, actually, I'm just going to go change that quickly. But once I move on to the next chapter, that's it. I've moved on to the next chapter. Until then, I get to the end of the story and I go back and edit. But that's just the way that I work. And I know plenty of authors who they edit as they go, and it works for them. And if you can make it work for them, then that's fine. Do it that way.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to figure out what works for me, and the only way that I get it, I have to. I mean, but I do spend a few weeks or a month or more sometimes. Can you guys hear me? I saw an unstable video connection thing.
Yeah, you dropped out for a bit, but you're back now.
Okay. But I just have to sit down and write. I have a certain amount of words that I want to get through a day to meet a schedule. And once I spend some weeks or a month or even two thinking about it and writing down an outline, because I am a plotter, I just have to keep writing. And if I go back and edit, the first book I did, I would go back in, edit, rearrange, to get warmed up for the day. It's not a bad idea to go back a few paragraphs and just reread a little bit, maybe change a few words around, but don't spend much time on that, and then get going. I think that can help a lot, but I really have to just get it down and then realize it's like, Abercrombie or any number of other people say, just, throw the sand in the sandbox. You can make it into castles later, or drag the log into the shop. You can do the fine sculpture later. Right now, you're just dragging that log in. I will stop if to save myself some time, I will stop on occasion, a third, half, 2/3 of the way through a book and re-outline. And what that does is it keeps me, I rarely throw stuff away. I will trim pieces, but I rarely throw away full chapters or have to start over. That's never happened, luckily for me. And I think it's because I do outline and plot quite a bit.
Awesome. What about you, Mike? What's your approach?
I'm pretty much with Rob. I tend to write through until I'm done and then go back and edit. I will sometimes, if I'm just not in the mood to write, but I still feel like I have to do something. I'll go back and sort of edit like the previous chapter kind of thing to get my brain sort of in the word mode.
I think one of the biggest problems that I see a lot of new writers have is that they get stuck in not thinking what they've written is any good after 5 chapters in, or just 1 chapter in, or halfway through the book. So they go back and start over, or they go back and rewrite. They've written the same chapter 5 times and they've never gotten past chapter 1. Just write it, just get it all out. And I am convinced when I'm doing that, writing really fast, but ignoring the wording and just, I know what needs to happen. So I just need to get that crap down. And forcing myself not to fix typos because I'm a terrible typist and I'm slow. And I keep going, and I'm generally convinced that it sucks all the way through a whole draft. Then when I go back, I actually find that a lot of it, that's like, I'll even have like the new chapter location describe stuff here in brackets, right? And then I'll go back and search for those. But then I'll just type out like 4 or 5, descriptors for the environment. I'll even find that half of that stuff I just keep. It's like, oh, well, that's the last book was so long it almost killed me. At 235,000 words, the edit almost killed me because there was so much. So I've sworn never ever to write a book that long again, but now I know better.
Awesome. All right. Next question is, this is a bit of a sort of open-ended one, but the question is, how do you guys feel about books that have sequels of between 5 and 10 books? Do you feel this is too much? And that comes from Gamer Discipline is the username of the person who submitted that. So I suppose we can just use this to talk about our general feelings towards long series and how we have sort of decided to tackle those or not tackle those in our writing. Who wants to?
Is it too much from what standpoint? I mean, long series definitely aren't marketable. I mean, Game of Thrones not marketable.
Why do you say
Sanderson's latest one not marketable. Malazan, nah. So there's no problem with longer series at all. I mean, they're obviously incredibly successful. They're incredibly profitable as well. So if you've got a story that can go on for 5, 6, 10, whatever books, do it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there are two sides as a reader and a writer, like Rob said. As a writer, I don't know how people do it. I mean, I don't think that I could write anything longer than 3 or 4 books. I really just don't see how people can do that. And even like Harry Potter, how do you just keep? Now the nice thing is she had a structure. There was a year in school for each one, so she just had to come up with a thing. So that was kind of cool. But then to keep it going, but the adventure ones, I have a real hard time thinking, how do you possibly? And then I read, I mean, as a reader, I really do like long series, but I don't read very many. I very rarely read them, simply because I feel I need to get a sense of a lot more kinds of writing. There are a few that I've stuck with, but I don't even trilogies very often. I don't finish them. There are some that I do, but it's just I really I get antsy. I want to try new things. I want to learn new things, and if I was a fast reader, that wouldn't be a problem. But I'm such a slow reader that it would take me literally years to read something like Malazan, and I cannot get myself to devote that and just ignore everything else for that long of a time.
I've got the sneaking suspicion the Obsidian Path trilogy might be 2 trilogies. I think book 3, I'm going to try and wrap it up, but the story is too. Or if I might just sort of do a second.
Sorry, Mike, we just lost you for a couple of seconds there.
Yeah,
you were just saying.
Yeah, we lost
the story.
My internet. Yeah, I might do two trilogies to tell the whole story.
Why?
Not sure.
Why wouldn't you just make it 6 books?
Because I want the first trilogy finished, so I can market it as finished. Put out an omnibus edition, and do that. I don't want it open-ended because there are a shit ton of people who won't buy book 1 until the series is done. So if I call it a trilogy and there's a good end point at book 3, that'll be the first trilogy. It'll be kind of a Stephen R. Donaldson.
It's actually a good way to structure it for yourself as well. I've kind of done that with Esker's books. Like the first 3 books, The War Eternal, are a trilogy, but there are going to be 2 more books. It's all part of the same series, but I'm structuring it as a trilogy and a duology because it makes more sense in my head to write it that way. but they all are part of the same series. That's just the way I've decided to do it, and I think it can help to get the stories right in your head, basically, I find.
Yeah, I definitely think the trilogy structuring idea is really useful. I know that Derek Lander, who writes the Skullduggery Pleasant series, he's up to like book 13 at the moment or something in that. But he said how he structures that in sets of trilogies. So the first trilogy is about one specific type of obstacle, and then the second trilogy is like a different organization is sort of the main villains in each of those books. And it definitely is like a good way to sort of, yeah, have enough closure in each 3-book set that readers feel that you can actually, get a satisfying sense of conclusion to it, while also having that like comfort of knowing that there's going to be more books in the series and that you can like really sink your teeth into this long immersive experience. So yeah, I think
a hook at the end of like the first trilogy and the second trilogy if you've got more coming, so people are like, oh, I want to read more, not, oh, it's done.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's the other thing is like, yeah, you're still putting those hooks in so that people, are interested to keep pursuing future books in that as well. Next question.
By the way, Fletcher just dropped an exclusive, by the way. Like,
yeah, actually, let's just map for a second. You heard it here first on the Wizards, Warriors, and Words podcast. Oh, and now Fletcher's screen just went dark.
Yeah,
it's
sorry,
back.
Guys. I don't know what's going on. My internet's a little shaky today.
You're back now.
Yeah, you're good at the moment. All right, maybe this can be the second last question, or maybe the last one, depending on the answers. Cade Kessler asks, how do you go about balancing popular tropes versus unique content?
It's a good question. I have no idea.
Is there unique content? What is it? There's nothing new under the sun. As I've said before, I think that tropes are incredibly useful as a way of giving the reader familiarity that they don't have to work at to understand, which is a good way of just sort of endearing them to story or characters or whatever. It's sort of pre-packaged. Yes, you could say it's a bit lazy, but at the same time, it's that thing that they can understand and they can familiarize themselves with straight away, and it's just and there's a sort of sense of belonging with it that they just connect with easily. But you always want to try and you don't want to just have tropes. Obviously, you do want to have some unique content. As for the actual balance of it, I don't know, man. I just do.
Yeah, I feel like tropes are something for the reviewers and the readers to worry about, and not so much for the writer.
We lost him again?
Like dropped out again?
I
totally agree with that, though. There was like when it was going through, because like we recently just recorded the bad reviews episode, which I'm not sure if that came out before or after this one for our listeners. But yeah, there was one review. There was literally just the reviewer
a trope or
pointing out like a bunch of TV trope pages that like vaguely were reflected in this book. They're like, oh, this book has like a crapsack world with like this particular type of morality or whatever. And it was basically just like them going, gotcha, I found a trope here. Gotcha, I found another trope here. And it's like, that's not really the point. Like the point is how they're used in the book. So yeah, that's
one of mine. I have seen the word crapsack used for my world, my first Earth world, many times.
Take it as a compliment. I mean, better to have a sack than to not have a sack for that sort of stuff. I don't know how that works.
Damn. I wanted to hear what Mike was saying, but it looks like we lost him again.
Are you back?
One thing that I mean, the major impetus for Paternus, besides all these weird ideas of my love of mythology and all these things I had wanted to do for so long, is that I love books like Rick Riordan's books. I love The Secrets of the Immortal, Nicholas Flamel, by Michael Scott, and any number of like teen, grade school even, or YA books that deal with mythologies and the possibilities of mythologies being real. But these same kinds of like stories about these young people that move through the world. I wanted that same kind of story, but for grown-ups, right? For adults with like adult thoughts and wishes and a little more complex physics, metaphysics, ideas, philosophically, metaphysically, whatever. I wanted, grown-up stuff with a lot more nasty, more realistic nastiness of violence, and people actually think about sex, and, at least, and I wanted that, and I just wasn't seeing it so much other than in, honestly, like PNR, kind of stuff. Paranormal romance, but I didn't want to do a PNR, and I didn't want to do wolf shifter man kind of stuff. I wanted much more like a Reardon, Nicholas Flamel kind of feel to it, but for grown-ups. And I thought American Gods was going to be that, but it's not. It's not what I was particularly looking for. So I'm like, okay, all these ideas I've had, it sounds to me like this is the book that I want to write, like that I need to write. So pulling a lot of tropes, I put it together, but with adding all these other crazy ideas for the story. So I would say, to answer that question, is think about all the books that you read and that you love, and have you seen this particular angle, this particular type of character, is there something you really want to see that you just haven't seen, or haven't seen the way you'd like it to be told, right? And I think that might help.
Yeah, there's no problem with using a trope, but maybe see if you can twist it slightly, put your own little spin on it.
Yeah, well, think about what you'd like to see. I mean, what are you missing in the books that you've read? Somebody may have done it. We can't all read every book, but it's just, what do you want to see? I mean, what would you like to see in a book? And then do that.
Awesome advice. And yeah, I think the useful way to think about tropes is just as tools, and like any tool can produce a good result or it can produce a bad result, and it's just up to your skill to decide how that's going to be. All right, well, I think that wraps up our listener questions episode. If you have any questions that you want to send into the show for us to answer on future listener question episodes, just send us an email, wizardswarriorswords@gmail.com. The email address will also be in the show notes for this as well. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for watching Wizards, Warriors, and Words. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so that we can keep growing this and keep sharing our writing advice with more authors. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.